Hello and welcome to Breakill's home. This is the most important video where you will know the correct procedure to install the coil, find the hotspot and remove them, perform the wicking and do a correct dryburn. Complex coils are a unique world, as well as the mesh, the temperature control and so on. Each world has its own rules. Often the procedures to adopt, although simple and trivial, are sometimes ignored, often complicating very simple maneuvers. Let's start from the coil setting. In some cases, it is necessary or preferable to modify the coil setup. In example, you may need to add or remove half wrap to fit different legs. Let's see the sniper as an example. It comes with legs in opposite direction, but we may need to adapt to a deck with posts on the same side. To add the wrap, insert the 2mm tip into the coil, and while with the index we will keep the coil steady, we will rotate around one of the two legs, thus adding the half turn. This way we will ensure that the wraps have all the same tension. Let's see the opposite case. This is the triple core 0.3 ohm that we want to mount in dual coil. In this case, it will be necessary to perform half a turn. We will then gently pull one of the legs, doing so rotate the coil and doing half a turn. We can create a prebend if we want. To do so, it is worth carrying the leg a little less, creating an angle of about 90 degrees between the two legs, and with a clamp, we bend it again to 90 degrees, aligning the legs on the same side. In general, the advice is to rotate the screwdriver holding the wraps rather than wrap the wire around the tip to avoid spring effect phenomena, common especially to the smaller coils. It can happen that the coil is turned backward from the deck setup or turned in the opposite direction. This is usually not a problem, except in special cases such as airflow from below. For many of these such cases, a version is available wrapped in the correct direction. Then we come to the assembly and the hotspot fixing. Hotspots are the most controversial and misunderstood topic of the world of the complex coil. It is often thought that a well-built coil is free from hotspots, while an inaccurate coil has more. An hotspot actually arises when the current finds a faster path through the outer wrap, instead of flowing into the inner core. This happens when the coil loses its shape or the turns are partially superimposed following the assembly on the post. The more complex is a coil in its outer wrap, the greater the point of contact between the turns that can provide a shortcut to the current. The thinner the wire that makes up the core, the more likely the coil will decompose during assembly, providing shortcuts to the current and then hotspots. Let's see how to avoid coil damage through the most effective, safe and immediate procedure. First, make sure to create tension and uniformity between the wrap. In the case of a plain leg setup, insert the first leg almost in contact with the post, the second leg we pull slightly toward the second post. The coil will be slightly diagonal and inserting the tip, in this case 2.5mm, we go to straighten. In case of MTL, it is always advisable to try to keep the distance from the post exactly in the middle between bell, post and deck. Let us therefore act beforehand on the most critical point, the point of junction between the legs and the actual coil. We separate the leg from the wraps both on one side and on the other. In this way, we will obtain a slight separation between the wraps. In the case of a leg setup in the same direction, the procedure is very similar. We go to insert the coil, stand very close to the post, then we pull out to create tension and try to slightly distance the leg from the turns. Now we can go and find the hotspots. To do this, in the case of an electronic system, it is recommended to stay at half the watts used when vaping. If instead we use a tab or a mechanical mode, we will need more caution by making very short activation. We always recommend an electronic system, which will also allow you to check the ohm value. If it is much lower than expected, surely the coil has hotspots. This will also allow us to verify that after the wicking no new ones are formed, verifying that the on value has not changed. Let's start with short pulses and identify those points that heat up before the other, our infamous hotspots. You will have seen videos where you scratch the coil or worse, tighten with ceramic tweezer and so on. This is the safest method to destroy your coil forever and waste your money. What you have to do is exactly the opposite. Gently separate the wraps where they form. It is important also to check inside and below the coil. Once you get the correct activation from the inside to the outside, we can rejoin the turns, and if a new spot is formed, this time just move the wrap slightly. Almost certainly you will get different shades of the coil, starting from yellow to blue. This happens in particular when the wire is well cleaned and free from impurities. As you continue to heat, the coil darkens to a darker color. You will have understood that the procedure for removing hotspot is actually very easy and can be summarized in one simple concept. Separate the wraps, heat the coil, and then come together without compressing them too much. We're almost there, you just have to wick your coil. A small nod to capillarity, that phenomenon that allows the juice to flow inside the cotton up to your coil and the wrap of our aliens. This phenomenon requires that the fibers are aligned and not disordered, and works better on thinner gaps, and it follows contrary to popular belief that the thicker cotton works better than a fluffy one. In addition, insufficient cotton will always lead to a collapse of the cotton inside the coil, resulting in a lack of adhesion and therefore likely dry heat or even cotton burns. Exotic wicking methods like Scottish roll are therefore to be abandoned. I personally prefer the twist method because it allows you to not touch the cotton in the center and to get the maximum density. If it passes freely through the coil without having to twist it, it is definitely too little, and it is necessary to add the 50% to this quantity. We then take one side, create a curl, and do the same on the opposite side without ever touching the center. At this point, we squeeze the cotton to the maximum as we do with a wet towel to verify that it reaches the desired thickness. We put a moustache inside the coil. Once out, we hold this side and we twist the other end until we get the same compactness obtained right before. In this way, we will be able to insert inside the coil with maximum density. Now, we restore the horizontality of the fibers by pulling the two moustaches and comb the cotton in order to both straighten the fibers and to avoid snagging the liquid's control holes. In the case of a dripper, however, we recommend a method to let the coil breathe. That is, dense cotton inside, short moustache that leaves the underlying part free. So we come to the third part, which is maintenance. How often do you dryburn? And dryburn hurts? Contrary to popular belief, materials such as Cantal, Nichrome 60, 80, 19 are born to be thermally stable. Other materials such as steel and Nife, although not degraded, are subject to dilation and shrinkage due to temperature change, and therefore less suitable as the wire can become brittle if these variations are too sudden. Other materials such as Ni200 and titanium can release harmful compounds during activation, and it is therefore absolutely forbidden to dryburn them. All Breakill Xenium Lab coil are composed of nichrome alloys of the Italian companies Nembo and Suprema Ratio, from suppliers of the highest quality that follow all European standards. Making dryburn is therefore safe and recommended to ensure the life of the coil. It is usually preferable to dryburn more frequently than to wait for the coil to be covered in gunk that become difficult to remove. First of all, we remove the cotton. If it doesn't come out easily, I recommend to take it completely to dryness, almost to burn it. This will not cause any damage to our coil. At this point, if we have a chance, it is recommended to rinse the coil and use a nylon toothbrush to brush the residues. The use of metal toothbrushes is not recommended, as it may damage the outer wrap of the coil and impair its functionality. We verify that no hot spots are formed by removing the cotton and turn on the coil until the rust residues are incinerated. We wait for the coil to cool and rinse. Our coil is therefore clean and ready to be re-wicked. It is absolutely forbidden to immerse the red-hot coil in cold water. This hardening has the only effect to brittle the coil, which could break with extreme fragility. How often do you dry burn? It depends almost exclusively on the liquid. The value on the catalog refers to the minimum values obtained in the worst situation. Usually a good indicator is when the outer wrap of the coil begins to show the first incrustation, is the ideal time to proceed to cleaning. The coil performance naturally tends to decrease slightly with the continuation of the enamel, to the point where even a vigorous cleaning does not restore the coil operativity. A coil at its end of life will have two tight dry burn intervals and an unmistakable burning aftertaste, and it will be time to change our alien. As usual, before we say goodbye, we make a quick summary to maintain simplicity and clarity of the whole. If you need to add or remove half a wrap to your coil to fit the deck, be sure to rotate the screwdriver around the leg and not the opposite to keep the turns uniform. When mounting the coil, be equidistant between the deck, the post and the bell to avoid overheating. Before starting, separate the legs from the wrap, then check the presence of hotspot with short activation, and where it occurs, go to separate the wraps. Once the coil turns on correctly from the inside to the outside, you can go ahead without compressing too much to recompose the coil. Wicking should be done as dense as possible and not fluffy. Finally, Dryburn should be done when the coil begins to encrust and not when it is already covered with gunk. The more frequently you do it, the easier it will be to clean the coil. You just remove the cotton, rinse, if possible brush the coil with the toothbrush, gently heat up to burn the residue, let the coil cool down, rinse and go ahead with new cotton. I hope this video has made the maintenance of the coil clear and simple. If you find this video helpful, please leave a like below and ask any further question in the comments. I will answer you as soon as possible. For this video is everything, thank you and goodbye to the next video.